We've been getting a number of free revamped ship costumes lately in Star Trek Online. First, we got those two Nova variants, the Quasar and the Aurora. Then we got the Rapier off the Saber class, and Thomas Maroney has already teased a revamp for the Jupiter class carriers. So I thought I would take the time to talk about other ships that I desperately want to see get revamps in the game. The first ship that I'd really love to see get a revamp is the Aquarius class, mostly because this thing sits in the back of an Odyssey class, so that means this thing getting a revamp means a little bit of a touch-up for the Odyssey as well, but at the same time, I mean, I always thought this was a really cool ship, and I love the idea that you get to pilot the ship that, you know, comes out of the back of the Odyssey class. I love that they made this its own ship, and while the T6 version did come with the Eagle costume, which looks fantastic, I still, you know, this is the one that sits in the back of the Odyssey, so I would love for this one to get, you know, some attention because it is quite dated at this point. So it'd be really cool to see this one get a full revamp. Plus, you know, while they're touching this up, you know, it might be nice to see them, you know, take some time to make it so that you can get the Eagle to be able to dock in the back of the various Odyssey variants, which actually brings me to the next ship on this list. Actually the next two ships on this list, because I would love to see both the Sojourner and the Endeavor get some revamps of their own so they can fit in with the rest of the Odyssey templates, because I mean these are cool looking ships, or at least, you know, there are parts of them that are really cool. Like I always loved the idea of this massive saucer on the Odyssey from the Sojourner class, because I mean look at this thing, it's very Galaxy class-esque, being, you know, so wide. So it's kind of cool to see that on a ship that's already as big as an Odyssey class variant. Plus, I always liked the star drive section on this thing. You know, it's very Excelsior-esque. You know, it's got the ribbed section on the necks, plus the very round main deflector, and then this part kind of the where this slope comes in. It comes in very sharply, much more so than on the standard Odyssey down here. So I always thought that was kind of a cool thing. I also like that the photon torpedoes are here along the spine instead of like down here near the on either side of the Aquarius on Sojourner. I always thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, I think this ship would be really cool to see, to have a revamp on it, and, you know, not just that one, but also the Endeavor as well, because the Endeavor, it was always definitely like the least of my least favorite of the three Odyssey variants. It's so weirdly sharp and jagged in certain areas. I think that was like the idea was it was supposed to take like inspiration from parts of the Arbiter class, and I guess the not the Arbiter, the Avenger class, and the Arbiter by extension. But, you know, to kind of translate that into an Odyssey, I don't think it worked that great, honestly. So it'd be nice to see them kind of touch this up, kind of smooth some of this out a little bit. You know, kind of, you know, make it blend in a little bit better with the other Odysseys, because I mean, the overall shape of this thing is cool. Like I really love the sharper saucer section on this thing. It makes it a bit more aggressive looking, but the star drive section on this thing I always thought looked kind of weird. The nacelles look cool though. I always did like the nacelles on this thing. But yeah, like I was saying, the touching up these plus the Aquarius, I think that would be a good chance to give them an excuse to add the option to put the Eagle in the back of the Odysseys instead of just the Aquarius. Though I guess that might just be wishful thinking. But, you know, it would be cool to see. And don't worry, this list isn't going to be exclusively Federation ships, because there are a couple alien ships that I really love to see get revamps. The first being the Hapax. I've said many times before, I always love the look of this ship. I always thought that this should have been the Romulan Republic flagship rather than the Scimitar. It's much more fitting. It's, you know, it's really, I love the look of it. I like the vaguely the Deridex inspired look of it, you know, having the two wing sections, but now they're separated because the whole ship separates. Yeah, it's a cool looking ship in my opinion, but it's also a very old looking ship at this point. You know, this thing hasn't been touched since Legacy of Romulus, I think. So I think it'd be really cool to see this thing get a full blown revamp. Maybe, you know, touch it up, make it so it can use the Ronadair hull material. Because, you know, that seems to be kind of like the standard hull material they use for the Romulans at this point, which is fine with me because the Ronadair material looks fantastic. So again, it'd be really cool to see the Hapax be able to use that. Yeah, it's also got the Hakona and the Kara costumes on it, but mainly my big concern would be for the Hapax, because this is kind of like the standard skin on it, and, you know, I think it's the best looking one too. Like Hakona and Kara are interesting, but, you know, I think The Hapax is like the signature one, and I feel like that's the one that should be focused for getting a revamp. Moving over to the Klingon side, we've got the Moog class. This is another one I've always liked the look of. I mean, of all the original Klingon ships for Star Trek Online, this one's always been my favorite. It's got so many aspects that you would expect out of a Klingon ship. And, you know, it's mean looking, it's aggressive, it's got these big honking guns attached to it. But yeah, it's a bit smaller than something like the Vorcha class, so it's a bit more mean. It's kind of like a halfway point between like a Vorcha and a Bird of Prey in some ways, but with a lot of design aesthetics that you would expect on something like the Bortosk. And that's one of the things I would love to see on this. You know, touch up this model a bit and make it so it can use the updated Bortosk hull material. I think that would go a long way to make this thing look a lot cooler. Moving back to the Federation side, next is the Venture class. This is a variant of the Galaxy class, which again, this is another one I've always thought was really cool looking. You know, it's one of those early C-story adaptations of existing canon ships to be made in like the early Star Trek Online style for the game. So, you know, it uses like the old Type 6 hull material, and it would be really cool to see this thing revamped to use the revamped Odyssey hull material instead, because again, there's a lot of cool stuff on this ship that I think is really. I love the main deflector on this thing. It's very reminiscent of the Odyssey, but also has bits of the Galaxy in it as well. And I love the extra detail around it too. So it kind of makes the star drive section look a bit beefier. I would like to see like the torpedo tubes move down a little bit. I feel like they're a little too close to the saucer section, but beyond that, this is a cool design, and I'd love to see more done with it. Now, on the next ship, I was actually going to use another Galaxy variant, the Envoy class, because that thing is hideous. It desperately needs a revamp, but I've discovered that its parts aren't available on either the Legendary Galaxy or the World Razor. Like, that's how bad that ship is. You can't even use its parts on the modern versions of the Galaxy. I'm going to go check out other versions of the Galaxy, see if I can find something that actually uses those parts. Here we go, the Envoy class. Look at this thing. I honestly, I don't want this thing to get revamped for the sake of it, because I think it looks cool. I want this thing to get revamped more just out of the sake of curiosity. Like, how on earth are they going to salvage this? Because like this model is so bad. This template isn't even available on other T6 versions of the Galaxy class. This wasn't available on the Legendary Galaxy, the Cygnus, or the World Razor. I had to dig out one of the T4 Galaxies in order to even find this thing. So yeah, I really want to see this thing get revamped. Like I said, more out of the sake of curiosity than anything else. And honestly, I'm going to cheat on this list too, and I'm going to throw the Celestial in here too, because this one also is not available on the other versions of the Galaxy, the T6 versions, which this one isn't nearly as bad as Envoy, but yeah, it's not great either. So yeah, we're gonna cheat and throw both Celestial and Envoy into the same slot, because they need so much work, and I'm genuinely curious how they can make these things fit into the modern state of the game. Next up is the Baran Dreadnought. This is a ship that I've always been really fond of, looks-wise. Like, its stats have always been kind of a little underwhelming. It's not the worst ship in the game, but it's always been looked down upon because of how little tactical seating it has for a Dreadnought. But honestly, it's still a decent ship. But the thing we're talking about here is the visuals. And while the visuals on the ship aren't bad, they're not great either. I mean, mostly because this thing is still only using the Type 7 hull. This ship was never updated to be able to include the 7A hull like a lot of the counterparts that were released alongside of it, mainly the other ships released with Age of Discovery. Which I always found weird that this ship was excluded from those revamps, mostly because I always thought it was like one of the best looking ones. But yeah, this one never got that revamp, which is a shame, because I've always liked the look of it. So I would love to see this thing finally get the revamp, or at least, you know, get the visual update that I certainly think it deserves. Though I would change one thing here. These are the impulse engines, these tiny little things. You can move those somewhere else, because these look like RCS thrusters, not impulse engines. Either like move them here, or like move them onto like the edge of the saucer section. Actually, or move them both, because I mean, this is a big ship, so like put like 2 here and then put like 2 here. Yeah, that would make the ship a lot cooler. But yeah, beyond that, you know, this is a cool looking ship. Like, I love the exposed deflector on this thing. I always thought that was such a unique look. And yeah, the Shenzhou also does that, but you know, this one did it first. So yeah, I really like this thing, and I would love to see it, you know, given a bit of an update. Next up on the list is the Imperial. This is a variant of the Sovereign class, and frankly, there are any number of the Sovereign class templates you could add to this list that need revamps, because like the Archon, I always thought was kind of funny looking. It could certainly use a touch up, but honestly, I was never a huge fan of just the overall shape of this thing, mainly because of the nacelles. They're ridiculous. And I mean, then there's also like Majestic and the Noble, which could really use revamps too. Even the Regent, this would be a good candidate for a revamp, but I singled out the Imperial specifically just because I always thought this one had the most interesting shape out of all the Sovereigns. It's so drastically different from all the other Sovereigns that it makes me like genuinely astonished they were actually able to fit this thing onto the Sovereign skeleton. Like the Imperial, it has a very interesting saucer shape. The hull material, the star drive section, the engineering hull is much more like blocky than a lot of the others, which I think is kind of interesting. But you know, it's also very old. You know, this is a very different art style than you would expect from a lot of other Star Trek Online ships to be in. But you know, it makes me really curious how they would like adapt a lot of these features into the current visual aesthetic of the game. So this is another one where I'm just more curious than anything else to see what they would do with this to fit into the modern artistic look of the game. Because honestly, I feel like this could be a really interesting looking ship if it just could get some TLC on it. Next on the list is the Sao Paulo. This is a variant of the Defiant class, which, I mean, you can probably tell just by looking at it. I always thought this was a really cool looking ship. This was like one of the first Defiant variants introduced into the C-Store. This was, you know, meant to be another one of those that uses the Type 6 hull material based off of the lower tier ships. And this one I always thought was really cool looking because it very much looks like just a refit of the original Defiant. You know, the nacelles are largely the same shape, but they're angled more forward than aft. They've also added like the classic hull grills along the side, which I thought was a cool detail. The forward like deflector dish pod thing here is largely the same, but they added this extra like glowy bit on top of it, which I thought was kind of cool. But for the most part, this looks just like the normal Defiant, but with just some extra bits added onto it, which is kind of the whole appeal to me, in my opinion. This looks less like its own individual ship, and this looks like, you know, a refitted Defiant, which I think, I don't know, that was just kind of a cool vibe. And yeah, like with the Sovereign, you could add plenty of other ships on this to this list from the ship. Like there's the Gallant, which yeesh. And then there's the Vigilant, which isn't quite as bad, but still, yeesh. You could also even add the Valiant, which is certainly showing its age by now. But I wanted to single out the Sao Paulo just because I thought it was the most interesting looking ship. And this is, like, if they were going to revamp any of these, this is the one I would love to see. Like, they could, regularly, I think they should just, like, add, you know, make this look a bit more like the original Defiant. So just, like, take the Defiant and then modify the pieces to kind of fit in more with this than with any of the others. So, and just do what I kind of suggest before of making a quote-unquote refitted Defiant. In fact, actually, what does this look like in the Defiant hull material? Not bad. Actually, it's very flat, it's very bland, but, you know, that's kind of a sign of the model itself, because that's just, you know, what it looks like, because that's how old it is. So, like, giving this thing like the revamped look to it, I think this could be a really interesting looking ship. I was originally only planning to do 10 ships for this list, but since I've already kind of cheated with the Galaxy variants by adding both Envoy and Celestial to the list, let's do one more just for the sake of it. And technically it's not even one more, because Avenger really doesn't really need a revamp. It already got a revamp with the release of Legendary Avenger. And yeah, I could add like Arbiter to the list, but honestly, I don't really like the look of the Arbiter. I don't think a revamp would fix it. Honestly, the thing I want to point out here is a certain hull material available on the Avenger. Where is it? The Avenger class hull material. This was a hull material that it was only available on the Avenger and its variants, and I've always thought this was a really cool looking hull material. It was basically the Type 6 hull material, but made darker, make it look like more of a stealth ship than anything else. And I thought that was really cool. They even gave it special windows too. Yeah, and I always thought these were really cool looking, and I wish this had gotten a revamp along with the Avenger itself. But, you know, I get, you know, there's only time for so much, but I would love to see this Avenger hull material revamped to look like just like a darker version, you know, kind of like the shade of the revamped Odyssey hull material. More than that, I would love to see it be able to be used on other ships beyond just the Avenger. I think that's the thing that would really make it worth it to revamp this hull material, would be to make it available on more ships. Because, you know, it'd be cool to have, you know, just this hull material available on other ships to give even more variety to the customization options. Because, like, you know, this is cool. You know, I do love the black and white aesthetic off of the Odyssey hull material. It's one of the main reasons why I love the Odyssey class so much. But you know what? Goth version would be really cool too. So it's just something, you know, I've thought about a lot, and you know, just Avenger hull material. It'd be really cool. So yeah, those are 10 ship costumes that I desperately want to see get revamps in Star Trek Online. Let me know what you thought of this list down below in the comments, and feel free to list what ships that you would desperately want to see get revamps also. While you're down there, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. If you would like to further support the channel, you can hit that join button to become a member, or you can find the link to the merch store down below. Or if you're ever shopping at the Epic Game Store, be sure to use my content creator code STU1701. Either of these help me out a lot, and I really do appreciate it. But either way though, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.